Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to have a short discussion on why Boris Johnson isn't doing what you'd expect a national leader to do in a time of crisis, which is to explain to the public what the crisis is, what are the factors causing it, what the trajectory of the crisis is likely to be, and what the government and the public needs to do to manage it. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I saw a former civil servant explaining what they would advise the Prime Minister to do in order to address the energy crisis. And I'll link the full thread in the description below if you want to read it. But the gist of it is they would need to address the nation and, amongst other things, make the following key points in no particular order. The crisis is caused by an increase in the price of gas. This increase in the price has been caused in large parts by the actions of Russia. That although the government needs to take action, the government alone can't make the crisis go away. The increase in the price of gas is a symptom of supplies that are less than the demand. In other words, we don't have enough. That we need gas for heating, generating electricity and producing industrial goods. That the government will make sure people don't go without heating or electricity, but that people need to limit the amount of gas they use. Don't do without essential uses, but consider reducing consumption where it's possible. By working on reducing our consumption of gas, we'll actually make a stronger, cleaner economy for the future, that the crisis is going to last a long time, and that the crisis is serious. And as I said in my intro, at a time of national crisis, the head of government has a duty to keep the public informed. They did so with the pandemic. I mean, I could point fingers at how their political ideology made them mislead from time to time and make the wrong decisions. But they still regularly updated the public with the measures that the government were taking, measures that they needed the public to take, and what the short and medium term future would look like. Their delivery wasn't the best, so the short and medium term future never looked like they described, but some effort was made to inform. So the question is, why aren't the government doing the same now when we have yet another crisis? Well, let's go down some of these key points that either Johnson now or Truss later, or maybe Sunak, would need to explain. So first, the cause of the crisis is that gas supplies are lower than demand. That's why the price has gone up such a lot. Bit of a problem with telling the public this, because the government try to find any excuse to bash the EU, and they are absolutely loving talking about how some EU countries became really reliant on Russian gas and Nord Stream 2 was an absolute disaster, but that we didn't. But if we say now that actually we haven't got enough gas, people go, well, hang on a minute. If we're not reliant on the supplies that are causing the problem, you say it's Russia causing the problem, but we're not reliant on Russian gas. Why are we paying higher prices for this electricity than the countries that you say are reliant on the Russian gas? In fact, how come none of the major economies of the EU are seeing anywhere near the same level of price increases that the UK is? You know, I had it pointed out to me in a comment on the video I was doing yesterday on something similar, that a lot of people in this country, and I can well believe this, I've not seen the poll myself, but I can well believe it. A lot of people in this country think that the price increases we've got, that's happening all over Europe. It is not. You know, people, and that may come out if the governments start talking more publicly about it. People may also find out that the Conservatives sold off our gas reserves a few years ago. One of their cost-cutting measures. What have we got gas reserves for? We're not going to be short of gas. It'll be fine. Sell it off. What do you mean we're short of gas? It's like burning your blankets so you can stay warm for a few more minutes. Frankly, if the government did their jobs and made live statements to the public about the nature of the crisis, it'd generate a lot of public interest. Now, that's good because that's what it's supposed to do. But it would also invite questions. The second point about what we need the gas for, that's also a sore point for the government. See, Labour have recently been showing how their policies to insulate homes was knocked on the head by the Tories. You can see a few years of, there was a large insulation programme instigated by Labour. And in the first few years of the Conservative government, it was still going on because it was all set in motion. The funding was already there. But the Conservatives then knocked it on the head. They didn't carry it on. So it then went from insulating lots of homes to insulating none. Like from millions a year to basically bugger all. Now, if people's homes were better insulated, We wouldn't need as much gas for heating, would we? People would ask why the Tories stopped insulating homes. In addition, the point about using gas to generate some of our electricity, that's also an area the government don't want people asking questions. Because about half of our electricity is generated using gas. So why is the price of all electricity so high? There are energy companies who boast about sourcing all of their electricity from renewable sources. Why are their prices so high as well then? It's because prices are set according to the price of producing electricity from gas, even when it's not. Which brings me on to the third difficulty for the government. They take donations from oil and gas companies. Oil and gas companies are not keen on any government measures to reduce our reliance on gas or oil. And the Conservatives always deliver for their donors first, even when it's powerfully against the public interest, even when it results in great public harm. We saw this during the pandemic when the government left health and social care workers without life-saving PPE because they gave the money for it to friends and donors to buy it on the open market instead of going to manufacturers directly themselves. The consequence of this is a lot of the time they didn't get anything at all in return, and when they did, it was much delayed. The government aren't going to do anything to mess with the profitability of corporations who throw the party a few quid now and then. 4, the Conservatives have a real problem telling people that an emergency is going to carry on for a long time. We saw this through the pandemic as well. The emergency was always just a few weeks from being under control. Now they try and tell us it is under control. It's not. You know, then there's a sense in which it's good to give the public short-term goals to focus on. You can't say, right, you need to do this. It's going to be here for years. Sort yourselves out. Short-term goals, which you can then update. Well done, we've done this now. This is the next thing we need to do. You know, especially when the public need to participate to manage the emergency. But you have to be honest about the trajectory. The problem with COVID is the Conservatives didn't want people to change their behaviour for the long term. They wanted people to go back to the old normal, even when it's quite clear it's not at all feasible. Why? Well, in the case of COVID, the obvious way to change behaviour was, say, more working at home for clerical workers who could just as easily do it at home. But that would mean less use of public transport, less fuel being bought for private cars, less office space needing renting, more energy being used at the lower domestic rate, and less food and drink being bought at cafes and sandwich shops. Basically, it would require a complete rework of the economy. But this would harm the commercial interests of, yeah, you guessed it, Tory party donors. Those who rent out office space, those who own sandwich shops, those who own train companies. The energy companies, they make more money per kilowatt hour selling electricity to an office than they do a home. If a load of office workers suddenly working at home, they're paying the lower domestic rate. Well, this energy crisis would also necessitate a change in behaviour that would yield benefits even beyond the emergency. But the Tories want us to carry on as normal. And if we have to diverge from the normal at all, only do so as much as is necessary for as long as is strictly necessary, so that going back to the old normal is easy and natural. Because the normal helps their donors. A rethink about how we live our lives facing modern realities harms their donors. So yes, this is a serious crisis and it's going to last a long time. But no Conservative Prime Minister will step up and have that conversation with the public unless they feel there's just no other option, because it would threaten the economic model that has given them wealth and power, just as COVID did. Remember, they only acted on COVID at all because they couldn't survive the death toll politically. They couldn't manage that. The fact that they're not doing so with the energy crisis means that they think that they can manage the death toll from this. You know, when it transpires that a lot of extra, particularly elderly people in poverty, die of the cold in their own homes this winter, they obviously feel that either the numbers won't be high enough to cause them political trouble, or that if they are, the deaths won't be directly blamed on the government. They will do the bare minimum to maintain the current failing economic model. And this applies with every emergency we face, and we are going to be facing a lot of them now, because several hundred years of industrialisation is taking its toll. And the worst people to have in charge of such a situation are right-wing corporate shills. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.